When I was 23, I started talking to this guy named Noah, who worked at the same co-working space as me in Austin. I was renting a desk there for my small graphic design business, and he was a software developer for some startup. We didn't talk much at first. Just a few nods in the hallway, a smile here and there. But over time, he started making small conversation, asking about my projects, complimenting my tattoos, offering to grab me coffee if he was going downstairs. It was subtle and sweet, harmless. Eventually, he asked if I wanted to go for drinks. I said yes. It didn't feel rushed. I was flattered. Our first date was casual, one of those rooftop bars downtown with live music and string lights. He was charming, a little awkward, in an endearing way, and had this dry sense of humor I appreciated. The conversation flowed easily, and I felt surprisingly comfortable with him. There wasn't anything overtly romantic, no hand-holding or flirting, but I chalked it up to first date jitters. We went out again a week later, this time dinner and a movie. He picked a little Thai place I loved, and even remembered my drink order from the bar. The movie was some indie horror film. Not exactly first date material, but he made a point to say he knew I was into creepy stuff based on the books I brought to work. I thought that was sweet, thoughtful. But things started getting weird after that. The third time we met up, I invited him to my place. Nothing fancy, just takeout and a few episodes of some true crime docuseries I'd been binging. He came over, brought wine, and everything seemed normal. But halfway through the evening, he made a comment that didn't sit right. We were watching a part about a guy who stalked women through dating apps, and Noah said something like, "You'd be impossible to stalk. You're too careful. You never take the same route home twice." I laughed nervously and asked how he'd know that. He just smiled and said, "I pay attention." It unsettled me. I brushed it off in the moment. Maybe it was just a weird attempt at flattery, but the mood had shifted. I suddenly felt hyper-aware of how much I told him, where I lived, that I lived alone, my routines, my favorite lunch spots. I decided I needed to put some distance between us. After that night, I stopped reaching out. I told him I was swamped with client work and needed to focus. He took it well, or so I thought. He stopped coming to the co-working space for a few days, and I figured maybe he'd gotten the hint. But then I started seeing him around my apartment. At first, I convinced myself it was coincidence. He showed up at the coffee shop down the block while I was in line. I didn't say anything, just nodded politely. Another time, I saw him at the park where I went jogging. He waved and jogged past me. Again, maybe just coincidence. But then I got a text. Nice shoes. Black and gray Nikes, right? I hadn't posted anything that day. Hadn't snapped a photo. Hadn't told anyone I was going for a run. I texted back, "Where are you?" And he replied, "You just passed me." I spun around. I didn't see anyone. I didn't reply again. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the hallway made me jump. I kept checking the peephole, the locks, the windows. In the morning, there was a note slid under my door. "I'm not trying to scare you. I just like being near you." No signature, just the note. I called the building manager and asked if I could see security footage. They said they couldn't release it without police involvement. I didn't go that far. I didn't want to cause drama unless I was sure. Instead, I blocked his number. I deleted his social media. I started taking Ubers instead of walking. Changed my routines, but the notes didn't stop. One appeared tucked into my windshield wiper. "You don't have to pretend." Another was in my mailbox. "Dinner soon?" The worst was one I found on my bathroom mirror one evening, stuck with a piece of tape. "You looked peaceful sleeping." That one broke me. I called the police finally, filed a report, told them everything, gave them his full name, his workplace, screenshots of his texts, the notes. They said they'd look into it, but that unless he'd physically harmed me or broken in, there wasn't much they could do yet. They recommended I get a restraining order, which I started the process for. Meanwhile, I stayed with a friend for a week. When I came back home, nothing had been touched. No new notes, no sightings. I thought maybe it was over. Then, one night, I forgot to lock the side balcony door. It was around 2 a.m. when I woke up to a soft creaking sound. Not from the hallway, from the inside. I sat up in bed, heart pounding. The sound was faint, like someone trying to be quiet but still stepping on floorboards. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and held my breath. Then I heard the whisper, "I knew you'd come back." I didn't scream. I don't know why. I slid out of bed as silently as I could and crawled under it, trying to keep my breathing low. I texted 911 and shared my location. Then I waited. From under the bed, I could see the silhouette of someone in my room. He wasn't searching. He wasn't even moving much, just standing, like he was waiting. He sat down on my bed. I saw the outline of his boots. Yes, boots, resting flat against the carpet. I couldn't breathe. Minutes passed. He finally stood, walked around the room, opened my closet, then my drawers. Then he whispered again, closer this time. "You don't need all this." Then he left. I waited until I heard the balcony door click shut. Then I bolted, ran down the hall, out the door, into the parking lot barefoot. The cops found no one, but they found the lock to the balcony had been picked. And they found a small camera tucked into the baseboard molding near my dresser. A real camera, battery-powered, motion-activated. He had been watching me. I got a full restraining order after that. Had the locks changed. Installed a security system. Moved to a different part of town within the month. I never went back to that co-working space. I never saw Noah again. But sometimes when I'm out, grocery store, movie theater, a bar, I catch a glimpse of someone who looks like him, and it makes my skin crawl. Because the worst part wasn't that he stalked me. It was that for a while I thought he was sweet, thought we had a connection. And now, I can't trust that feeling anymore. I was in the 7th grade when this happened, and even now, more than a decade later, I still think about it more than I'd like to admit. At the time, I thought it was just something creepy that happened to me, but now that I'm older, I understand how seriously wrong it was. It started innocently enough, the way most middle school things do. Our school had this student-run news channel that played on the TVs every Friday morning. I signed up for the tech crew because I didn't like being on camera, and I figured I'd be safe behind the scenes. That's where I met Tyler. Tyler was an 8th grader, which, in middle school terms, made him a full-grown adult. He was tall for his age, quiet but charismatic, the kind of guy the teachers liked because he was helpful. We got along fine. He showed me how to use the editing software and helped me set up microphones. I thought he was nice. I never had a crush on him. I just liked that he treated me like a real person. At first, it was just small things. He'd bring me extra snacks from the vending machine, offer to carry my backpack if I was staying late for a project, or laugh at my dumb jokes when no one else did. I remember thinking, wow, someone older actually notices me. And then, things started to escalate. It wasn't just the small gestures anymore. There were moments that felt more intense. His actions became harder to ignore. But then it started to get strange. One afternoon, after the morning broadcast, he pulled me aside and handed me a small envelope. "Open it later," he said with a grin, and then walked off like it was nothing. Inside was a letter. In it, he said he liked me, that I was special, that I was different from other girls. He said he felt drawn to me, and that he thought about me all the time. He ended it with, "You make school feel worth it. I think we'd be perfect together. Don't tell anyone about this." I didn't know what to do. I was 13. No one had ever said anything like that to me before. I wasn't flattered. I was uncomfortable. Still, I didn't tell anyone. I was scared of making it into a big deal, scared of being laughed at or blamed somehow. I tried to act normal, but he didn't stop. He waited outside my classroom and handed me a second note. This one was shorter, but more intense. I avoided him after that. I stopped going to the tech room, asked my teacher if I could switch back to the regular classroom for homeroom. She said yes without asking questions, which made me think she might have suspected something. I hoped that would be the end of it. In the digital age, Tyler's story took a dark turn with a series of online messages. These messages, filled with cryptic warnings and eerie threats, painted a chilling picture of what was to come. The once vibrant online community became a web of fear and suspicion. As the messages continued, the true horror of Tyler's situation began to unfold. This was just the beginning of the nightmare. The haunting tale of Tyler was far from over, but that's when he started messaging me. Back then, we all used this app called Kik. I didn't remember giving him my username, but somehow he found it. His messages started friendly, just hi or what's up, but when I didn't reply, they got weirder. Things like, "I saw you today. You look pretty. Why won't you talk to me anymore? I miss you. You're the only person who understands me." The next morning, I found a folded piece of paper in my locker. I thought we were close. I don't understand what I did wrong. My stomach dropped. I hadn't told anyone which locker was mine. He'd followed me. I skipped lunch and sat in the nurse's office pretending I had a headache. Later that week, someone told me Tyler had been asking about me, asking if I was mad at him or if I talked about him to anyone. He said he was worried about me, that I seemed sad. It was manipulative, and I didn't understand that word yet. But I understood the feeling. It felt like a trap. Section. Telling my mom duration. 1 minute. I finally told my mom. We were in the car on the way home from piano lessons. I hadn't planned to say anything, but the words spilled out. She went silent. When we got home, she made me show her every message and every screenshot I had. I was embarrassed and scared, but she didn't get mad. She just said, "You did the right thing." The next day, she called the school. Things moved fast after that. I was pulled out of class to speak with the counselor. They asked me to recount everything. I told them about the letters, the messages, the locker, everything. To my relief, they took it seriously. They said Tyler had violated school policy and that they'd be contacting his parents. They said I'd be allowed to switch my schedule so we wouldn't cross paths anymore. Tyler denied everything. He said I'd made it up, that I'd sent him the messages and that he had blocked me. He told them I had a crush on him. He even had friends back him up. I felt sick. I'd never even been alone in a room with him. Luckily, the school had some evidence. Other students had seen the notes. One teacher had overheard him saying something creepy about me. The aftermath of all this was a whirlwind. People started to take sides, and the school had to get involved. It wasn't just about Tyler and me anymore. It became a bigger issue, involving parents and authorities. I just wanted it all to end, but it seemed like the storm was just beginning. But still, they didn't expel him. They just suspended him for a few days and told him to stay away. After that, he mostly did. Mostly. He'd still stare at me across the cafeteria, but I never let myself be alone in any part of the school again. Things quieted down by the end of the year. He graduated and moved on to high school. The school quietly assigned him to a different district. I never found out why. But that summer, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just a folded envelope tucked into our mailbox. Inside was a photo of me, sitting on my porch, reading a book, taken from across the street. On the back, in sloppy blue ink, it read, "I told you." The discovery of the photo left me rattled, and I knew I had to take action. I went straight to the police, hoping they could make sense of it, but their answers were as elusive as the sender. With no solid leads, I wandered into the bookstore, seeking solace in the familiar scent of old pages. I hoped to find some clue, some connection, anything to make this bizarre puzzle fit together. That's when my mom involved the police. They couldn't prove it was him, but the officer who came to our house seemed angrier than expected. He told my mom, "This kid is escalating." We filed a report. Nothing happened. Eventually the letters stopped. I moved on, went to high school, made new friends, joined theater and speech team. By my senior year, I almost forgot about it all. But then, one night during winter break, I was working the closing shift at a bookstore cafe near campus. I was 17, confident, doing okay. A guy walked in just before closing. Hoodie pulled low, earbuds in, head down. He came up to the counter and ordered a coffee. When I looked up, I froze. It was him. Older now. Taller, sharper features, but unmistakably, Tyler. He didn't say anything, just handed me a $10 bill and smiled. I rang him up, my hands shook. He took the cup, sat down in the far corner, and stared at me. I didn't tell my manager. When we finally locked up for the night, I waited for him to leave, watched him through the window. He stood on the sidewalk for 10 minutes, watching the door. He walked away. I never saw him again. To this day, I don't know what his end goal was. Maybe he thought it was romantic. Maybe he thought I owed him something. All I know is he was never punished the way he should have been. And worse, for a long time, I believed that I couldn't cause a scene, that I should be flattered. I don't feel that way anymore. I keep every note in a box in my closet. Not because I want to remember him, but because if he ever comes back, I want proof. I can't share my name, location, or any details that could let someone trace this back to me. Even writing this makes my chest tighten. I haven't told most of my closest friends, and my family only knows the surface-level version. The memories live in me like scar tissue. Maybe writing them down will help. I was 25, living alone in a quiet suburb in the Pacific Northwest for about a year. I worked from home as a freelance web developer and didn't go out much. Most of my social life was online or over text. I'm not antisocial. I just value privacy, quiet, and peace. The house I lived in was a one-story rental, modest, a bit dated, but it had that old wood-paneled charm. It sat at the end of a short cul-de-sac, with neighbors only on one side. Across the street was a tree line, and beyond that, endless pine forest and silence. The house next door was empty when I moved in. It had been on and off the market for years, never occupied for long. When I asked the landlord why, he just shrugged. I didn't think much of it at the time. Everything shifted when she moved in. I'll call her April. I first noticed her unloading boxes from a red hatchback late one Tuesday. She looked familiar somehow. Slim, pale, long dark hair pulled into a messy bun, oversized sweatshirt slipping off one shoulder. Not exactly beautiful, but there was something unforgettable about her. I gave a polite wave as I walked by. She waved back, her face unreadable, simple, harmless. Over the next few days, I saw her coming and going at odd hours. Early morning runs, groceries at midnight. She didn't smile much, didn't wave again, always wore headphones, always alone. One night, I was taking the trash out and noticed her standing in her front yard, completely still, looking up at the stars. I almost said something dumb and friendly, like clear night, huh? But she turned and walked inside before I could. Then I started noticing little things. A light on in her attic window at 3 a.m., even though I'd never seen her go up there. A second shadow flickering past the curtains when she was clearly alone. Her garbage bins were always empty, even though she was clearly living there. Once I watched her bring out a single black trash bag, place it in the bin, then take it back inside moments later. I figured she was just private. Maybe odd. So was I. Then she knocked. Around 10 p.m., I was watching a movie with headphones when I caught movement outside the window. I froze. A silhouette stood there, unmoving. No knock, just watching. I got up slowly and looked through the peephole. April was there. I opened the door just a crack, enough to see her face. She looked strange, pale, exhausted, her eyes wide and shifting as if searching for something behind me. "Hey, everything okay? Can I borrow a flashlight?" "The power's out." I blinked. Every house on the block had lights, including hers. I could see her porch light from here. Your porch light is on. That must be from the batteries. I need to check the basement." Her tone made my scalp crawl. I handed her a flashlight, and she muttered thanks before hurrying away. The next morning, the flashlight was back on my porch, clean and perfectly placed. Then the noises began. At first, it was just soft thumps from her backyard, or a faint scraping, metal on wood. One night, I thought I heard a child's laugh, but only ever saw April. I tried to ignore it, turned up my music, focused on work. Then I heard something outside. It was a Wednesday night, about 1 a.m. I was still up, coding for a client, when I heard a clear rustling by my back window. I muted my music, heart pounding. Then suddenly, the tap. 3 soft taps. Fingers on glass. I crept to the window, pulled the curtain aside. No one was there. But something was. I stood there, frozen for what felt like a minute. I grabbed my phone and texted my landlord. No answer. I messaged a friend nearby. He offered to come, but I told him not to. I didn't want anyone else involved. I cleaned the window. Maybe it was just a prank, something stupid. The next night, I set up a cheap webcam. The next morning, I reviewed the footage. At 3:12 a.m., April stood in my backyard, arms at her sides, staring at my window. She didn't move for 42 minutes. Then, without a word, she turned and disappeared into the woods. I called the police. They arrived, took my statement, and promised to speak with her. She denied it all, insisting I was mistaken and that she'd been home asleep. There was nothing they could do. The investigation was intense and thorough. Every detail was scrutinized, every lead followed. Tension filled the uncertain air. That weekend I left town to stay with my sister, needed space. Monday afternoon, I found my back door was unlocked. Nothing was missing, nothing was damaged. But on my kitchen table sat my flashlight, the one I'd lent her. Taped to it, a photo of me, asleep. My breath caught. I couldn't speak. I dropped the flashlight, backed out, got in my car, and drove to the police. This time, they acted fast. A formal investigation began, and a protection order was issued. I stayed with friends while police searched her house with a warrant. What they found still haunts me. In her attic were dozens of photos, all of me, different angles, different times, me getting my mail, me walking to my car, me through my window. There was a journal too, page after page of frantic handwriting, some words clear, others lost. My name appeared again and again. She wrote things like, "He's mine, he sees me, we speak in silence." Notes detailed my routines, when I left for groceries, how long I showered, even what I watched on TV. She had entered before. She was arrested and charged with stalking, breaking and entering, and trespassing. At the hearing, she never looked at me, just stared ahead, hands trembling. Her lawyer cited mental illness. It's been a while since all of that happened. The memories, though, still linger. Sometimes late at night, I find myself replaying the events in my mind, wondering if there was something I could have done differently. Life goes on, but the shadows of the past have a way of sticking around. That should have been the end, but it wasn't. A month later, I found a letter. No return address, no postmark, just an envelope on my porch. Inside was a note. "They can't keep me. I know you still think about me." That was it. I moved 2 weeks later, changed jobs, numbers, and got a P.O. box. I still don't know how she found my address or how she left the letter there. I haven't heard from her since, but every time I hear a knock, frozen.